Okay, so this is a photo of a electronics marketplace in Shenzhen, China. And this is the way that I think about the modular ecosystem. So a lot of your hardware, including things like phones and laptops, are made in this place, in this city in China, Shenzhen. And it's kind of like a hub where all of these different hardware manufacturers can all kind of work together. And in Shenzhen, you can prototype a new phone in like 1 day or 2 days, whereas anywhere in the world, it would take you months or years. And you kind of have all of these different components of a hardware stack and all of these different manufacturers all kind of like trading with each other and providing different pieces of the stack. Like your iPhone, for example, most of the components in there are not made by Apple. It's made by all of these different manufacturers, whether it's like your camera, your touchpad, your screen, so on and so forth. And so you can kind of think of the modular kind of like ecosystem in that way. You have all of these different layers like execution, settlement, consensus, data availability, bridging, block explorers, rollup-as-a-service providers, and all of these projects are all kind of like collaborating with each other, interoperating with each other, connecting with each other. But what if we took some gasoline and lit this modular marketplace on fire because it sucks? And what if we try to imagine like what the ideal future would look like, or what the ideal synthesis of this like modular marketplace would look like? Because there's obviously still a lot of work to do. So first of all, let's start with the thesis. Like, why are we even here in the first place? I think a big part of why we're here in the first place is because since kind of like Bitcoin was created in 2008, we've been kind of stuck in this loop of new layer ones. Like every cycle, there's these new layer ones, right? That have incremental improvements over the previous layer ones, right? First you had Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then you have Cardano, Tron, all those kind of projects. Then last cycle you had Solana and Avalanche. This cycle you have Aptos and Sui. It's like, where does it end, right? It's like every cycle there's new layer ones that have incremental improvements over the previous layer ones. And all these layer ones try to create a whole new ecosystem that replicate the ecosystem of Ethereum by having some DEX somewhere, some NFT apps, some namespace, name service, and so on and so forth. And I think like if we want crypto to mature, then we have to kind of like break out of this loop that we've been stuck in by having a positive sum ecosystem, not a tribal ecosystem where it's like just a bunch of layer ones in tribes trying to create parallel ecosystems, reinventing the wheel, and so on and so forth. But with a modular ecosystem, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like if you want to make a better version of the EVM, you don't have to create a whole new layer one just to do that. You can just do that in a minute by going to a rollup-as-a-service provider, create a fork of your EVM, add a new opcode, whatever you want to do, and in 1 minute you can spin up your own rollup that inherits the security of Ethereum or Celestia or any other DA layer. And the first Modular Summit 1.0, 3 years ago, I think was very much about the theory of things like rollups and the modular stack. Like a lot of it hadn't been implemented. Like there wasn't even, I think, any general purpose, rollup frameworks. Like this was before we had the OP stack. Like this was just one like OP was OP mainnet. This was before Arbitrum Nitro. So like, people were expected just to use specific rollup networks, rollup mainnets, but you couldn't really build your own application-specific rollup. Then last Modular Summit last year, we had the practice, right? We had these things actually being implemented, We had rollup frameworks, we had bridges, we had all of this infrastructure. We had the first inklings of new rollup-as-a-service providers. But the big difference between last year and this year is that last year there was zero blockchains live that supported data availability blobs. Like EIP 4844 wasn't live, Celestia wasn't live, nothing was live, right? You had very limited data availability throughput. Now we have 3. We have Celestia, we have EIP 4844, and EigenDA. And I think that's significantly changed the game because now we're seeing an explosion of rollups, and that's why the theme of this summit is modular expansion. So this was, if you look at the modular ecosystem in 2022, it's pretty early. 2023, last year, we had an explosion of kind of like these infrastructure projects, bridges, sequencers, frameworks, rollup-as-a-service. This year, there's a little bit more infrastructure projects, right? But not as big as a jump from 2022 to 2023. You know, there's some new execution environments, there's some new bridging providers, and so on and so forth. But where we see the biggest difference is in the actual number of developers or the actual number of rollups, right? And I think this is largely thanks to the emergence of rollup-as-a-service providers. So these were the rollups that were deployed in 2023, and I kind of like sourced this data from L2Beat, you know, Wayback Machine. These were the rollups, right? You had a bunch of general purpose rollups. These are what I call universal rollups, and these were like, you know, just general purpose EVM chains, you know, nothing differentiated. And then you had application-specific rollups. You had a few of them. Now this year we have a huge explosion of new application-specific rollups and general-purpose rollups. And as I said, this is like largely thanks to the emergence of new rollup-as-a-service providers. Because what we're seeing is that developers are choosing to actually deploy new applications, not using smart contracts, but by deploying new rollups. Because what we're seeing as part of the fat application thesis is that application developers want to own as much of the infrastructure as possible, because then they can actually, for example, either have more flexibility in making new use cases possible that weren't possible before, or capture more revenue that makes developing these kind of applications more sustainable. So who knows what we'll see next year at next year's Modular Summit 2025. I think 1,000 rollups. I mean, maybe that's ambitious, but I think we'll definitely see a lot more application-specific rollups for sure. But why does modularity actually suck? But like, what is the antithesis of modularity? So I'll read out this tweet to you, right? We fucking lost it. Nobody in their right mind wants over 550 rollups and endless layers that take days to bridge back. What the world wants is like one goddamn chain that just works, and that should be Ethereum. No one with a shred of sanity wants to switch networks in MetaMask. No one wants the headache of adding a token manually on another chain because the contract address isn't the same. Bridging is a pain in the ass. What people want is to transact value simply and directly without all of this convoluted bullshit. And that's like, there's a lot of truth to that, right? It's like, it is kind of like bridging does kind of suck, you know? Like MetaMask, this is what MetaMask would look like if you use all these L2s. You know, who would understand this? Like, you know, doesn't make sense, you know? The other problem is, you know, there's this dream of sampling light nodes. So we do have sampling light nodes, you know, we have these beams of sampling light nodes, you know, and then it's pretty cool, right? But so far it's just a meme, right? Like, you know, it's just people running light nodes on a laptop in cool places, and that's kind of cool. But that's not the point of light nodes. Like, the point of light nodes is not just to run them for fun, it's to actually embed them into wallets so that people don't have to trust centralized RPC providers like Infura and Alchemy, right? That should be the point of it. But we're not there yet. And finally, like, we're still deploying a lot of duplicate general purpose EVM chains. So like, what is the point of modularity? Are we actually taking advantage of modularity? Or are we just like copying and pasting a bunch of chains with the same applications, right? So what is the synthesis, and like, what is the destination, and where are we actually going? Because I do think there is progress on all these problems, and I do think these are solvable problems, and we have to solve them because we do need to break out of this monolithic layer one loop. We can't just have endless layer ones. So it's really important to solve this problem. In terms of the bridging, these are solvable problems. Like, there are good bridging experiences. You know, chain abstraction, you know, that's become hyped, but there is some merit to chain abstraction, and things like cross-chain contract calls and intents, right? Those things do actually work, and there are good user experiences. Like Skip API is a pretty good user experience. For example, if you want to mint an NFT on Stargaze from the Cosmos Hub, you can do that in one transaction without even realizing you're interacting with a different chain. So, like, you can try out these products like the Skip API, for example, and Hyperlane, and see what a good bridging experience is like. So ideally, we live in a world where, just like if you use a web browser, you access lots of different websites, but you don't care what infrastructure they use. You don't care if they're AWS or DigitalOcean. So it is possible. Like we know how to build it. We just need to build a world where, like you don't have to. Like if you're using a chain, you should, and you're bridging between two different chains or multiple chains. You shouldn't even have to realize that they're different chains, right? It should feel all like one seamless experience, like you're using one single chain, and that is possible. Like we've seen demos and actual live bridges that do that with things like cross-contract calls. Now we just need everyone to work together to actually make this possible, to make this widespread. So it's like if you're building a new rollup, then how you think about interoperability should be the first thing you think about. Like, and then we need everyone to work together, including block explorers and wallets. People need to build wallets that support things like chain abstraction or cross-contract calls, and things like chain-specific addresses. If we had an address format that was actually specified the chain that address is on, that simple things like that would make the user experience way better. You know. Finally, light nodes, right? As I mentioned, the whole point of light nodes is that we should be running them in wallets, not just as a meme. So, video. This is a demo. It's actually live. You can go on this right now. Lumina.rs. This is a first step of making this a reality. You can now run a Celestia data availability sampling light node on your computer, on your laptop, in a browser, or on your phone. So you can go on this website right now on your phone, and your phone will immediately start sampling from the browser. And this is a very important first step to actually making light nodes useful, because now that we have an in-browser implementation of a Celestia data availability sampling light node, what that means is that now it's way easier to embed that into wallets, right? So now, because this is a WebAssembly implementation, so now we can embed that into wallets like Kepler or MetaMask way more easily, because they're just browser extensions, right? And this is just a code that runs in the browser. So there's QR codes all around the venue. You can actually, I think if you scan one of the QR codes, you can actually mint an NFT for running one of these on your phone or on your desktop. So check it out. It's pretty cool. Finally, we are seeing an emergence of non-EVM rollups that aren't just duplicates of each other. I think the bottleneck has been a big bottleneck around that has been proving. Like a lot of the proving infrastructure right now exists for AVM, right? I mean, you do have stuff like Arbitrum Stylus, for example, which is a important direction, but we also have provable. There's been a huge amount of advancements in provable ZK VMs like SP1 and Erasure0. Now it's possible to actually prove any arbitrary code using a ZK VM without having to write whole new circuits, and I think that will open kind of like a whole new era of alternative execution environments that you can actually ZK prove using rollups. And then, yeah, we do have some early alternative VM rollup frameworks coming live. You have Rollkit, which supports Cosmos SDK. You have Move. Eclipse is building SVM rollups. Cartesi is pretty cool. You can basically Linux rollups. And now we're seeing Solana L2s. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about Solana L2s. Is ZK compression a rollup? That's a debate for another day. But we do see now even Solana, which was always thought to be the end game of Solana, is one big monolithic chain. Now there's a demand for L2s there and rollups. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that we do make progress on these problems, and because, as I said, we need to the crypto will always suck, and crypto will never actually mature into a useful space if we're going to be permanently stuck in this loop of just people building new layer ones to basically have incremental improvements, but are basically tribes in a negative sum ecosystem where people are competing with each other. It's important that we have a positive sum ecosystem where modularism thrives over maximalism, And all of these components can actually harmoniously work together, and that it's not a pain in the ass for users, and bridging is seamless, and it all feels like one L1 or one chain that everyone's using. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in this loop of infrastructure. So that's why the theme of this year's summit is modular expansion. And so these are the things that I think we need to do to actually expand, to make rollups expand and actually useful for people. And I'm looking forward to more interesting conversations with you all at the summit. Thank you.